Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the North Carolina Department of Information Technology's Broadband Infrastructure Office's Completing Access to Broadband Program webinar for counties. Today, I'm joined by several of my colleagues that are going to provide information for you on the Completing Access to Broadband program and how counties can participate. Today's webinar will be recorded, so we will be able to provide the webinar to you later along with the slides. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature and we will respond to you as soon as we can. Don't wait till the end to put in your questions. Please go ahead and do so when they come up. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the Director of the Broadband Infrastructure Office, Angie Bailey.
Good morning. Thank you, Crystal. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. I know some folks are still hopping on, which is fine. I'm Angie Bailey. I'm Director of the Broadband Infrastructure Office at NCDIT. And so over the past month, I would say that Nate Denny, our Deputy Secretary, and I were on a call with county managers about some of these changes coming up in our stopgap program. And we also spoke at the Association of County Commissioners annual conference. So we hope that you all have seen some of those discussions and are kind of becoming familiar with this topic, but we wanted to obviously have a formal webinar too to make sure we have caught everyone because there's a lot happening and things are going to move very quickly this fall. So happy last week of August, and we will jump in. So we're talking about both the Completing Access to Broadband program today and the stopgap program and how they are intertwined. So thanks for joining. Next slide, please. So today, the goal for the webinar, and I want to kind of touch on each bullet intentionally. So we're going to review the highlights and status of the CAB program, the Completing Access to Broadband program. We know that many of you all, we have 34 counties working on CAB with us, well, 36 this past fiscal year. So we know a lot of you are familiar with it, but reminders on CAB. We're going to review highlights from the Stopgap Solutions Program Notice of Funding Availability that we published a couple weeks ago. And then we're going to focus on the County Match for CAB, which is the intersection between the two programs. We're going to have a quick update on the CAB planning tool. That's where our mapping data is. We're going to review the county responsibilities and timing for participation. Review the county participation form itself, because that's what you all need to get back to us, and then answer questions. So that's the goal for today. So this session is intended for counties. We may have a few broadband providers on. Y'all are welcome to stay on. Just know that we will be reaching out more with providers in September as we start preparing CAB scopes of work and doing launching the protests for mapping and things like that. And today's focus is really about making sure counties understand whether enough information to decide whether they want to participate in the county match program. Okay, so let's dig in. Next slide, please. So again, the Completing Access to Broadband program, that is our largest broadband infrastructure program, $400 million for last mile broadband infrastructure. To increase, to build broadband to our unserved and underserved locations. Last year, we pre-qualified 41 broadband providers for the program. We still have the same 41 pre-qualified providers. Counties partner with NCDIT to identify areas that need access, and we create a scope of work for broadband providers to respond to. We post the scope of work and solicit proposals, and those get posted on our website, ncbroadband.gov. In the last round, we allowed 45 days for responses. We're still looking at what the exact response window will be.
Hi, everyone. It looks like we're having a small technical difficulty. Let me check with Angie Bailey and we'll be right back on. Thanks for your patience.
I think I'm back. Can you all hear me again?
You can.
Okay, I
Yes.
apologize. I don't know if that was just me. Um, sorry about that. I was logging in on my phone, but I just changed my NCID this morning. Anyway, I will get my phone up as backup just in case. So our CAB program again, we post the scope of works online. For each county, last round we allowed 45 days participants to respond. We're still deciding the exact timeline. Providers build out to at least 100 megabits per second download, 100 megabits per second upload, although generally we see much higher speeds than that. Next slide. And so that's the foundational CAB program. We did award $26 million in CAB last year as part of the GREAT Grant program. So that was our GREAT to CAB projects. And then in this past spring, we awarded another $96 million. Those were awarded by June 30th for the 34 counties that participated. That's connecting 41,738 households and businesses. And that's ARPA funding. And then counties are required to put in matching funds. Broadband providers are required to put in matching funds along with the DIT funding. I think, as you all know, as we've talked about, there was some legislation from the General Assembly to remove the program's county match requirement. That did not pass into law in June. And so that's why we've moved forward with this stopgap solutions concept. Next slide, please. So, and as part of this discussion about county match, we just want to acknowledge again how much you as counties have done to participate in our broadband programs over the past several years. So we have 48 counties that participated in the GREAT Grant or GREAT to CAB projects. We had 31 counties funding contributions. 31 participated in, 31 in GREAT Grant and the CAB program. 5 participated in CAB only. Sorry, the bullets are distinguishing exactly what program. And the 16 haven't participated with funding, but they have different, for different reasons that are listed there. But just to acknowledge what you all have done as a county, as counties. And so we have been looking at how to resolve the county match requirement issue, knowing that a lot of counties have spent their ARPA funds. Next slide, please. And so where we are, so we also have our Stopgap Solutions program, which is $86 million ARPA funding. We did issue a notice of funding availability and program guidance for that program on August 12th. And so this third bullet here is the entire legislation around that program. It's one paragraph, and it basically talks about stopgap funds being used to provide grants to internet service providers, local governments, for the provision and installation of broadband service. And so based on this legislation, we feel like we can provide grants to local governments, to counties for county match for CAB because it does specifically about grants for local government entities. And local governments, of course, don't provide their own broadband to residents and businesses. So we felt like this is a good solution. Next slide. And so again, with stopgap, we are allowed in our legislation to transfer funding between state and local fiscal recovery funds and our capital project funds. And so we are going to use our SFRF funds for this $86 million for stopgap. And so there is 2 purposes to the stopgap program: the county match for CAB, broadband line extension projects. We're not going to touch on line extension today. Today is really just about county match for CAB. We will be releasing additional information on the line extension fund in September or early October. So next slide. Okay, so stopgap solution funding for CAB, for county match. So what we need from you all, despite all this other information we were covering today, is the county participation form is due back to us by 11:59 on September 9th. So we're going to go over that form specifically. And so what's the kind of complex part of the program is figuring out how much funding to give to counties. So what we talk about in the guidance is a baseline amount of $500,000 to go to each county. And so that is the amount that we would need to basically leverage the 283 million in CAB that's remaining. So that amount of match to all the counties to spend this amount of CAB dollars that are remaining. And so, but what we don't know, of course, is how many counties are going to participate. So based on the overall demand for the program, that's what we need to know, how many counties are going to be in, so that we can see what is really available to give out. And so some of the criteria that we will use across the board to look at how much a county exactly gets, depending on how many are in the funding pot, how many want to participate. Counties receiving less than $8 million in ARPA funding would be prioritized. That is based on the CAB legislation directly. We have a directive to prioritize those counties. Counties that participate in the CAB program in FY 23-24, we would like to recognize, obviously, the money that you all have already put into the program. Counties that provided matching funds for the Great Grant Program, we want to recognize what you all have contributed. And then counties with the largest number of unserved, underserved locations in the state. So we understand that you all would like to know the exact amount, but we're not going to be able to tell you the exact amount that we can provide for a county match award until we know how many folks are going to participate. Folks, meaning counties, sorry. Next slide. Okay, so we will look at counties that have already put money into CAB. There's also the idea that if the legislature comes back before December, there is some legislation pending that would direct us to repay those counties. That's about $40 million. So we are tracking that. And if we are directed to repay that, we would set that money aside. It's just an unknown that we have at this moment. So besides setting that issue aside, as counties put in their matching funds to the CAB program, there's a required percentage of matching funds that's set out in legislation. So the percent that the county puts in, the percent that the broadband provider puts in, percent that DIT puts in, and that's in legislation. That won't change. Those percentages determine the maximum size, maximum project size as well. And so I know this is kind of a lot, and we encourage you, and we'll talk about this more as we wrap up this session, but Jeff Brooks on our team is meeting with counties individually. Shannon Gerger on our team can also talk to counties about exact funding amounts, because that's kind of we know that's where you all have questions, and that's where you'll have to kind of think through your strategy. But we encourage you to look at the full CAB program guidance, which is online at ncbroadband.gov. And all the percentages are listed out in that guidance. Next slide. And so again, as a reminder, and without going through kind of all the percentage combinations in this session, our CAB legislation splits out these three delineations. So counties receiving 8 million or more in ARPA funding have a particular amount of match that's required. Counties receiving 4 million and have a particular percentage, and counties receiving 250,000 to 4 million. And so all that still has to be folded into how we calculate and determine the exact county match amount that we would make with the stopgap funds. Next slide. So that's kind of generally how this program is going to work in terms of using stopgap funding for county match. I do want to remind folks that we have the NC-CAB planning tool. So that is online in our NC1 map. If you go to nc1map.gov in the broadband section, you can choose the NC-CAB planning tool. It has been updated last week, and so you can view, but to the right here, when there's a county filter, you select your county, and then at the bottom, once you've selected your county, it will tell you how many remaining unserved and underserved locations there are in your county. And so you may want to look at that just to get a sense of what's left. As a reminder, so we've got the CAB program rolling out with the stopgap county match. We've also got the line extension program, which will be smaller pockets of locations that will be rolling out this fall. And then, of course, we'll move into the BEAD program. And so there's still a lot of opportunity to make sure that access is provided, is built to these unserved and underserved locations. But we really encourage you to consider participating in this CAB round. I believe it has less requirements as far as federal requirements than the BEAD program will. So we believe, there may be more providers participating in CAB than what we'll have in BEAD. So we really want to see counties participate with us as much as possible. So that's where the CAB planning tool is online. If you want to check out how many locations are still unserved and underserved in your county. I will say that we are doing some slight updates to our protected locations, which is where we've made an award in your county. There's a new version of the FCC's fabric, which is the underlying locations, but where broadband is can be built to in the state. And so we're making a few tweaks as we move from fabric version 4. But that shouldn't affect your numbers significantly. So we encourage you to check those out. Next slide, please. All right, and Ramirez on our team is going to talk through timing.
Thank you, Angie. So the timing for the county match for CAB and the overall CAB program. So we do need to make sure that we get the county participation forms on September 9th. So again, it's up till midnight, as long as it's dated September 9th. We receive it in our CAB program email box. You're good to go. And then we will have a protest window for mapping data. We're looking at about 10 days. And then the scopes of work will be posted by October 1st is our goal. The responses will be due sometime in November. And then we're looking to do evaluations between November and December. And for those of you who participated in the last round, the evaluations, might have been a little bit longer. We are trying to abbreviate that process while still being efficient. All of this guidance is available on our website at the CAB guidance location. It's in the CAB section of our website. Next slide. Okay, so here's just a summary of some of the responsibilities. All the information can be found on the notice of funding. The Appendix A talks about the county match for CAB projects. So basically what we're talking about is using the stopgap funds, as Angie described, for that county match. So the county will be responsible for the following steps as part of the actual CAB program. And we haven't really changed the CAB program too much. The only difference is that now the county match is coming from stopgap. So we'll be reviewing the CAB scope of work template. So we just encourage you to review that unless you've, kind of participated with us before, you know what it looks like. We also need to make sure, and we say this again and again and again, county participation form returned by September 9th. Also, if you're submitting any priority location data, you would have to do so through the NC Biodata Exchange, also on September 9th. This is completely optional. You're not required to prioritize areas. The last round, we only had 20% of the counties prioritize the data. It did delay some of the posting of scope of work. It just takes a lot of time. So you are not required to prioritize. It also does limit what the ISPs are going to be able to bid on effectively and could increase the cost per location. So just keep that in mind. If you are interested in doing prioritization of data, you just have to let us know and we can get you credentials to the NC Biodata Exchange if you don't already have those. Then you would be selecting evaluation team members. Again, this is optional. So if you wanted to select some evaluation team members, that form is also due on September 9th. Not required, but is something that you can do. And then you would be participating in the review of responses. So if you do select some evaluation team members, again, optional, you would be actually participating in this evaluation process. If you participated in the last round, this will also be abbreviated. We want to make sure that we get everything done and completed in a timely manner, but also efficiently. So also issuance of the award, you would be completing MOU. So even though the money is free money, if you're not adding any additional funds, you would still be doing an MOU because this is kind of a grant that would be given to the county, and some reporting would probably also be required. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Shannon. She's going to go ahead and go through the county participation form.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, so I'm going to just walk through the county participation form. This form is I believe it's page 15 of the CAB guidance, the stopgap solution CAB guidance documentation that I put into the chat. This form is a required form to let us know that you are choosing to participate in this program. And so we do need this form filled out, signed, completed, returned via the CAB program at nc.gov website, email address, no later than September 9th, 11:59, as Gretchen said. So you'll see it's pretty basic form, easy to understand. But if you do have questions at any point while you're filling it out, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We can answer those questions. So what we're asking here is that the county submit this in order to request funding under the stopgap program, and then that the county just understands that this amount is based on some overall demands for funding and the prioritization criteria that's outlined in the guidance on page 11, I believe it is. Or excuse me, and she's listed it in slide 8 as well. The baseline for this funding is that $500,000 that Angie's already discussed, and that amount does kind of vary depending on some of that criteria. The participation form will determine an up to amount of county match funding. This county match funding is going to give you the total project cost. So if you participated in CAB, the first round of CAB, you'll understand that terminology is the total project cost. That's what we've calculated with all those percentages, the statutory percentages to give us the total cost with the county's participation amount, our participation amount, and the ISP's participation amount. That total project cost will give you the maximum total project cost, but please just be aware that when ISPs do bid on your projects, that may not be the maximum cost. You may have smaller projects that come in from those ISPs. And then once we get all of these forms in and are able to kind of calculate out, we will finalize that scope of work. We'll let the counties know kind of what those finalized numbers are, and we will work with the county to finalize that scope of work and get it posted out for bids. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this part of the form is an optional section. As we discussed, we do have that kind of baseline $500,000. It's kind of adjusted depending on participation and other criteria. But for some counties who may have participated in the first round and have saved money for a second round, or if you just have funding now that you maybe want to participate and want to include in this program, this is where you have that opportunity to add to that funding amount. So again, it is completely optional, but if the county does intend to contribute, you'll put that number in that blank, that dollar amount blank there. Just letting us know that you're contributing an additional amount to that funding source. And then down below, we're asking for that funding source, that type of funding source, whether it's it's ARPA funding or non-restricted general revenue funds. And then while you're determining an additional amount of funding that you want to include, if you need help calculating out the numbers and the percentages, I know they're kind of difficult to understand sometimes, and knowing how much to participate and how much you want to add in, please feel free to reach out to me. I can do those calculations for you. Anyone in our office can kind of guide you through some of those nuances of that kind of match percentages for you. So please, if you need help, just let us know there. In addition to that, the last part of this form, it just has the signature information. We do need this form to be signed by an authorized representative for the county, and then just the kind of information underneath that, which is, name, title, address, and that sort of thing. We do want to make sure that you see at the very bottom of the form again, we have put the CAB program at nc.gov. That is the email address that we do need you to submit this form to. And we need you to submit that by September 9th. I do want to point out one last thing, because it does involve county funding. Some counties will require this form to go, or these dollar amounts to go before their board for approval. So please do that before you submit this form. And that just let us know if there's any complications or any issues there, but we do need this form back by September 9th in order to proceed. Angie, did you want me to go over the evaluation team form?
Yeah, that would be super.
Okay, we do not have this form on the slides though. So on page, I'm sorry, Angie, did you?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so on page 16 of that CAB guidance is the county evaluation team form. This is an optional form. It's similar to the CAB first round CAB form. If a county, okay, so once all these forms have been completed and once we've gone through the process, we post this scope of work out for bid, we get the bids back. The internal staff here will do kind of a vetting process internally, and then at that point we'll send all of the responses out to the evaluation team. And Gretchen kind of mentioned in her portion there about the evaluation and the evaluation teams. The county, excuse me, for each county we'll have an evaluation team made up of 2 staff members here with DIT. So we'll have a kind of a subject matter expert regarding broadband, and then more of a process person here internally. And then the county can provide up to 2 members of the county. They must be county employees. And then so this last page of the CAB guidance is that evaluation team member form. So what we need there is just the name, title, phone number, and email address for the county employee that you would like to have on your evaluation team. This again is optional. You do not have to have a team. You do not have to have 2 teams. We just ask that if you do have members, they are county employees, and that notice that they will be representing the county on that team, that when we go review scopes of work, responses to the scopes of work and make those determinations. That form does need to be signed as well and returned to the CAB program at nc.gov by September 9th. All right, Angie, I think that's.
Thank you, Shannon. All right, next, okay. So next steps and questions. We're about done with our formal presentation. I guess I will make a few reminders and just to kind of point you to the people on our team working on this. So Jeff Brooks, who I'm sure all of you know, is working on kind of broad outreach and technical assistance for counties. So if you haven't met with him on this opportunity, he would be happy to meet with you. He's meeting with, I think, 30 counties this week. So please reach out to him. Shannon, if you have questions on the county participation form or the funding amounts, please reach out to Shannon Gerger. And then Gretchen is overseeing, she's working with our prioritization of mapping data because our mappers are fairly busy at the moment. And so she's the best contact for that. And then just in general, we really prefer you send any questions to cabprogram@nc.gov, even if you're working with someone individually, just because we're moving so quickly. That way we can all have access to the questions. Before we move to questions, I just want to say a couple quick reminders. I know we're being super redundant, but so out of all this information, I would just say, I heard a county say this at the Association of County Commissioners conference, is that they were feeling that CAB was going to be super complicated, and it actually was easier than they thought. And maybe I'm paraphrasing a little. And I sat next to someone that had said that they were concerned that they were going to have to do a procurement and learn all these things about broadband, and that they really didn't have the capacity. So the only thing a county would have to do to participate would be to fill out this county participation form, just the top half, and say, yeah, we want the free money. Sign it and get it to us by midnight or 11:59 on September 9th. And then we could do everything else. We obviously have the mapping data. We would publish the scope of work. We would do the evaluations and then update you on that. So that's the minimum. So try not to get, I know it's a little overwhelming. It's a lot and we have a very short timeline. So I would just want to make that reminder. And then the second thing, I just want to acknowledge again, we get that it's a little, not knowing the amount of funding is that gray area, maybe feel uncomfortable. But we just don't know. We don't know how much we can award the counties because we don't know how many are participating. And then I know that you all have to make the decision about whether to put more money in on top of that. And then of course, you've got the obligation deadline of December 31st. And so the tricky part is that we'll be finishing evaluations, making awards in November, early December. So if you do choose to put ARPA money in, the challenge is you're not going to have much notice at all for us to be able to say, hey, we got bids that are going to use all that ARPA money, or we didn't get enough, the project sizes aren't big enough, and we don't need that much ARPA. So you would need to have some type of plan for how you would take that remaining funding and obligate it before December 31st. So again, just kind of recognizing those are challenges and where we are. So, but we hope everyone will participate. Crystal, I don't know, do we have questions in the chat that we've not answered yet?
We do. Actually, we have some questions that we have answers for that might be applicable to everyone in case you're not seeing the chat. So I think it might be good to verbalize them here. And then we've got a few that we might have a couple needs to follow up. So the first question is, can stopgap match funding help counties that have already been awarded a CAB project?
Yes. So even the 34 that already participated, yes, everyone, we believe 99 counties are eligible. We believe there's one that's ineligible due to legislation, being Orange County, and we can talk with Orange offline.
Thank you. Is there a list of counties that provided a match for GREAT?
Yes, I saw that question from Jeff. Jeff, we can get that to you. We know the counties know, so we hadn't really thought about that, but we'd be happy. We'll put George on that and can get you a list.
Perfect. Okay, and then a lot of folks have been asking about the county commitment form. So that is currently, as Emily answered in the chat, on page 15 of the guidance. We will be adding that and some other documents to the website probably today or tomorrow. So we'll make sure that everyone who's attended this, as well as all counties, get access to that information, and we'll circulate that through the NCACC as well. Let's see. Lacey, you had a question about stopgap funds for the county match will not be subawarded to counties, right? The stopgap money remains in the state's custodies, and counties will not be responsible for federal compliance requirements unless some counties decide. So I think we may need to follow up with you on that to make sure our legal team has the correct answer for you there, Lacey, but we will be in touch and we'll make sure, again, that answer is circulated through NCACC as well.
Yes, we would still be considering, even if the funding, if it's DIT funding, we are making an award to the county. So, but I think, yeah, Lacey, we will circle up with you, and then maybe you all can publish something on that too.
Perfect. Okay, so we have another question. If they've already provided a CAB match, do we need to provide another match?
Yes. So this would be a totally separate round from the one last fiscal year.
Okay, perfect. And like I said, everyone, we will be adding the recording of this along with the slides from this, as well as some additional information to our website in the next day or so. So we will make sure to get your questions answered and make sure all of this is available. Wait, one more question just popped in. So will all funding from stopgap now be shifted over to CAB, and the stopgap program will not now happen? I believe that's clarifying to your earlier information.
Yes. So Chris, so we published the stopgap guidance on August 12th, and there's two program purposes. So one is county match for CAB. The other one is broadband line extension. So we will be publishing additional information on line extension, but we need to see how much it's going to be required for the county match. But yes, there is still the kind of traditional stopgap program being line extension that will be rolled out this fall also.
Perfect. Do we have any additional questions? Okay. Not seeing any. If you all have questions, you can always follow up at cabprogram@nc.gov, which I'm going to put up here. Thank you so much
Thank-
for attending today. We appreciate it. Go ahead,
Thank you. And
Angie.
I would just say we do plan to do some more outreach and webinars with counties that do. So if you choose to participate, we'll obviously be working with you on next steps. And also for our broadband providers, we will be doing some webinars next month on CAB.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.